Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition, and we turn now to poem 282, How Noteless Men and Pleiads Stand. You'll remember Pleiads from our conversation of poem 23, and we'll see it again one last time when we hit poem 851. Now, this is an interesting poem because many have read this poem as the end of a trinity or a trilogy. Poem 280, 281, and now 282. All of them together dealing with the ideas of loss, and it can either be understood as death or it can be the loss of a relationship. And in that regards, we'll see this now as kind of the culminating end of those two earlier poems, which leads us to our assumptions. Our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've already worked through our set of introductory comments. I'm really hopeful that you've already read our preceding 281 poems. We just finished with 281, 'Tis so appalling it exhilarates. Again, this idea of what is it like to experience loss. Emily is trying to capture this in some way. She says it this way: How noteless men and Pleiads stand until a sudden sky reveals the fact that one is wrapped forever from the eye. Members of the invisible existing while we stare in leagueless opportunity, or takeless as the air. Why didn't we detain them? The heavens with a smile sweep by our disappointed heads without a syllable. Now, in 22 poems, Emily will use this word syllable. And I think it's the key word of the poem, and I think it's the key word of these last three poems when taken as a whole. In other words, language is difficult for us to find when we are trying to understand loss. And it often will only take a single moment in this poem, the shooting of a star, to awaken us to the recognition there is nothing we can do or say when we are met face to face with loss. First of all, noteless will take us back to poem 278. You'll remember our use of the word there. And then men and Pleiads both stand noteless, that is to say, unaware. And again, as we said, Pleiads takes us back to 23, poem 23, and some comments that we made about Pleiads there. And then we'll see it again when we get to poem 851. We stand noteless, that is to say, unaware, until, and that's obviously the key word, a sudden sky, that is to say, a shooting star, reveals the fact that, notice capital O, one is wrapped. In 4 poems, we'll have this word wrapped. In 11 poems, rapture, it's equivalent. And then one is wrapped, taken, forever from the eye. In other words, we have these people in our lives that we love to be with, and then all of a sudden they're gone, either through death or the loss of a relationship or whatever. Then she'll say it, members of the invisible. Now, this is an interesting juxtaposition, because the word I here will make us think that there's two eyes when we study, of course, Plato. There's the physical eye, there's the spiritual or the inward eye. We've commented that for Emily, that notion of perspicacity, as Plato will talk about it in Republic, we've given full lectures at learnstrong.net, is that idea that there's two eyes, just like there's two understandings of the physical and then the metaphysical. Members of the invisible, possibly here the dead in heaven, existing while we stare. So notice we go from noteless to staring to try and figure out what's going on. Of course, staring takes us back to rap, doesn't it? In leagueless, that's the only time that word gets used in all of Emily's stuff, opportunity. In other words, the dead know things we don't know. We've seen this how many times already, and we're going to see more of it as we move on through these poems. And then she'll use this phrase, this word, or takeless, only time she ever uses it in her poetry. And then the interesting simile as the air. In other words, there's things that those who have passed on know that we just don't know. Okay, or we might say those who we have lost, now they know things we just don't know. Then this interesting rhetorical question, why didn't we detain them? Now, of course, this we is an interesting question, like we the living, possibly, detain them, hold on to them. The heavens notice with a smile. This will always seem to be kind of where Emily heads back when she begins to critique the notion of the heavens, deity, angels, the angelic creatures, that they know something we don't know, and there almost seems to be like a sense of humor in all of this with a smile. Sweep by our disappointed heads. You can hear all these S sounds, right? Without a syllable. This disappointed obviously takes us from rapt to staring to now disappointed heads. And as we said, without a syllable. I like to think of this notion of syllable. Go back to our discussion of Poem 263 with solemn alphabet. The attempt to try to explain, I think this is the point at 2a, that the loss of those we love is hard, it's disappointing, but more than that, it's a translinguistic experience. We just can't come up with words to explain it. And there's the irony, right? That Emily, through her word choice, will try to understand that leagueless or takeless. And the idea is here, it's beyond words. It's beyond language. The great poet of words can't come up with the right words. At 3a, well, there's a lot of different texts that I think we could relate to this, but I want to challenge you to think about our study of Dante's Divine Commedia. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net, especially Paradiso, and the way in which so much of what Dante wants to describe about paradise is beyond language, and yet he's going to try and find a way to do it, as we commented in our study of those cantos. Finally, at 3b, how do you, to own a poem like this, how do you deal with the loss of someone that you care about, and to what degree, even though it's disappointing, these poems somehow make it relatable? Thank you.